First in this position, Grandmaster Shakhriyar Mamediyarov sacrificed the rook!
The art of sacking in chess. Undoubtedly the most exciting aspect of the game. In this series, a guy who sacks a lot at chess is going to walk you through some of his techniques.
Woo! And the logo is way cooler than the actual content. Welcome guys to another episode of How to Suck in Chess. Today we are going to be looking at a Traxler counterattack. Not only this opening provides some ridiculous sacrificing opportunities, but also it was requested by this guy. So shout out to Nathaniel for suggesting this opening, and now let's dive right into this. So to get the Traxler counterattack on the board, we will have to face the Italian game, and after knight to f6, knight to g5 is the most played move. This is the fried liver attack, and here we are going to play bishop to c5. The idea of this move is we are going to hang the f7 pawn, but meanwhile get some really nice development for our pieces. So in this position, if we ask the stockfish, bishop captures on f7 is the most correct move, although knight captures on f7 is more common. But in today's video we are going to be looking at bishop captures on f7, as this was requested by Nathaniel. Alright, so white is having a pretty solid advantage, plus 1.4, and the reason is this opening is not like very sound, but it is super tricky, and I'll show you some really crazy attacking ideas where white people are, white players are usually messing up. So right here, of course, we need to bonk out our king to e7, and now white has to retreat the bishop back. The reason is, if they don't retreat the bishop back, just pawn to h6, kick away the knight, and the bishop is hanging. So most guys are going to go bishop to b3 in 50% of the times, but the most correct square for them to go is pawn to c4, which I will explain later. And then there is also bishop to d5. Basically anywhere they will put their bishop, our game plan is going to be still the same. So let's start with bishop to b3, which is the most common line. We are going to continue with pawn to d6. And the idea of this move is to open our light square bishop to go to g4 to hit the queen. And some other moves that we would like to play are queen to d7 or queen to e8, so it can help out with the attack on the light squares. Of course, knight to d4, which will put pressure against something that is on f3 or also against this c2 pawn. And also pawn to h6 at some point to harass this knight away if it is still on g5. So keep this setup in mind, and let's see this in practice against the most played lines by white. Now the two most played moves are getting castled short quickly, that is the safe option, or there is the greedy option to go knight to f7 and fork the rook and the queen. Both of these moves should lead to some big troubles for white very quickly. So let's start with having a look at what happens if they get castled. Well, we bring our bishop to g4 to hit the queen, and now the best move for them is to undevelop the knight back to f3. But people are reluctant to play this because they don't want to lose so easily this pressure they have built up against f7. And also the most played move, queen to e1, just sidestepping this, looks very natural. They want to put the queen on the file where our king is. Well, this is already a mistake, and the advantage is turning into our hands. What do we want to do next? Well, we want to play queen to d7 to help out our light square bishop with the attack. And kind of we are anticipating the move pawn to h3, and we are preparing to sacrifice the bishop right there. Just don't do it right away, because they have knight captures on h3 and this would suck. So yeah, actually h3 is the most played move here. And what we want to do here is push pawn to h6 to first get rid of this knight. So the most played move is knight to f7 going for the rook. And we can already sacrifice the bishop on h3. And if they dare to capture the bishop, well, we capture with our queen. And as Yoda would say,
the force strong with this checkmate, it is.
Grandmaster Yoda?
So the stockfish says this is forced checkmate in 9. But our opponents are very kindly just accelerating this process with knight captures the rook, and now after knight to g4 the mate is unstoppable in 2 moves. So that's not playable for them. How about they just capture the bishop? Well, we capture the knight, and now our rook is open. This is super great attacking position for us. And on top of everything, they are quickly going to mess up, like the most played move is queen to e2, and white is dreaming to protect this pawn probably or something, but it is not even possible because we already attacked it twice. So we go knight to d4 here. This is the time to shine for our knight because it comes with a tempo on the queen, and like most guys go to queen to c4 because they would like to give us a check, but this is again forced checkmate. We want to grab this pawn. Now we receive this check, but we just go king to d8 and there is nothing else for them. And yeah, this is forced checkmate in 5 moves, and this guy played knight to c3, which happens to walk into checkmate in 1 with knight to f3. Okay, not really playable for white either. How about they try to go knight to f3? Well, in this case, you just simply capture this knight, and it is a free piece for us. They cannot capture back, because if they capture back, we land our queen on h3, and this is just crushing. Minus 7.6 advantage for black. Okay, let's go back. So that was after they played queen to e1. We played queen to d7, and they went h3. Not really playable for them. The second most played move is the most correct one, and it is pawn to c3. With this move, white is trying to stop our knight from coming to d4, and also is preparing the strike in the middle with the d4. So, what to do here? Well, first of all, we are going to still push pawn to h6 to kick away this knight. And most guys are playing pawn to d4 to counter hit our bishop. Again, this is a mistake. We are going to capture the knight because we want to open up the rook. And they capture the bishop, and now we have this stunning move, bishop to f3. What a move. If they capture the bishop, then queen comes to h3, and this is again unstoppable checkmate. So what do? Most guys are throwing in these pawn captures, which doesn't really change the nature of this position. The most correct thing they can do is to play queen to e3, but now we have this jump scare move. Get ready. Boom! Rook captures on h2. What a brutal move. I mean, look at this position. Bishop is hanging, rook is hanging. So here they should be capturing this bishop. But let me just show you. If king captures the rook, this is going to lead to some super cool combo-wombo checkmating sequence. This craziness I haven't seen in a long time. So here we are going to play rook to h8 check. This forces the king to go back to g1. And now rook to h1 check. It's like we're asking white, sir, I don't like my rooks. Could you please take them off the board for me? And sir, what I do like is to place the queen on h3, checking your king. Because after king to g1, this is a checkmate. What a nasty combination of sacrifices. Basically, we are just kind of maneuvering the king first to h2 to open the file, and then to h1 to land the queen on h3. And of course, because of this spin, it is possible. Wow, crazy stuff. So what they have to do here is to capture the bishop. Wait, yes. So we capture on h2, they have to capture the bishop. But this is still losing for them, because now we double up the rooks on the h file. Of course, we are threatening a checkmate here, so the only way to prevent this is to push the g-pawn. By the way, pawn to g3 is not enough, and this is still a forced checkmate. And the better thing for them is to play pawn to g4. But now just remember, you don't want to throw in this check, because it would allow them to exchange both of your rooks for the queen, and that is not as strong as this move. Just a rook to h3, hitting the queen. And the stock figure is already suggesting to just give up the queen. But if they want to preserve it, they would have to go to f5. And now after this exchange, you are going to be winning their rook like this. This is a kind of a forced sequence to win the rook, and now they don't even have time to pick up this knight, because you are also hitting this bishop, and the rook is just very strong on their back rank. hindering their development and stuff. Yes, also this is hanging. Super great position for black. Okay, let's go back. So pretty much this concludes the traps if they get castled, and follow it up with queen to e1. Let's have a look at the more correct move, or I mean the best move for them, and that is to go knight to f3 as I mentioned. Well, here we are going to play knight to d4. You want to play this move because this is utilizing the PP on the PP rule, putting pressure on the pinned piece. And what do? Well, most guys are playing d3 and c3, and against both of these moves, c3 the stockfish recommends more. Against both of these moves, you just simply capture this knight, because this ruins their pawn structure, and now you place the bishop on h3, and you are hitting the rook. And this is just a slightly better for black, but the problem for white is they are not allowed to move the rook. And in this variation, you should be at least winning the exchange. But of course, most guys are going to move the rook because they don't want to lose the rook. Well, here comes queen to e8. This time we go this way because there is a pawn here, so queen to d7 wouldn't really work. After queen to e8, of course our threat is super obvious. We want to go queen to g6 and deliver a checkmate, so they have to hide the king on h1 and make a room for their rook here. But this just hangs this pawn. We can capture it, and now they don't have a rook to g1, so they would have to go to e2 with their rook if they want to preserve it. And now we can just totally devastate them with the move knight captures on e4. Again, what a super crazy move. If they capture with the pawn, this is forced checkmate in 9 moves with the rook to f8. And if they capture with the rook, this is again forced checkmate, this time in 10 moves after queen to g6. Now I'm not going to be showing you all the forced moves. If you'd like, check them out yourself, or you know, just get this position in the game and be a hero and fight the moves on your own. But anyways, what else can they do? Let's go back. Let's see pawn to d3, because in this variation, notice how now this pawn is protecting the pawn on e4. This will stop our nonsense with knight captures on e4. So let me show you. We are still going to do the same thing. We are going to capture the knight, and after they recapture, bishop to h3 to hit the rook. And again, if they move the rook, which is what most guys are naturally going to do, queen to e8, the same game plan. They have to put their king to safety on h1. Now we grab this pawn and hit the rook, and after rook to e8, well, this time we don't have knight captures on e4 because they are safely going to recapture like this. But what we can do is play bishop to d4. Most guys in the database are going bishop to b6, but bishop to d4 is stronger. This way they can play bishop to e3, and this kind of neutralizes our strong dark square bishop. But if we play bishop to d4, now bishop to e3 doesn't work because we can capture on b2 and win the rook. But anyways, this is not a strong variation, but it is still very nice advantage, minus 1.7 for black. Alright, let's go back. So after knight to d4, we have been looking at pawn to c3 and pawn to d3. Let's also mention pawn to h3. This one is pretty bad for them, because again we capture this, and after they recapture, now we even capture this pawn and the white king is even more exposed. And again they play rook to e1 and we go queen to e8. And after king to h2, we go queen to h5, and this is, we are cooking here. Alright, let's rewind this, and now let me briefly talk about what are the differences with them playing the bishop not on b3 but to d5 or c4. So we are back in the opening stage. The Traxler counter gambit counterattack is on the board, and they captured on f7, which is a correct move. King to e7, and now how about they play bishop to d5? So this is the second most played move. We are again going to continue with the same plan. After d6, getting castled is the most played move, and now bishop to g4 to hit the queen. Most times they are going to play queen to e1 again. And this time, in the previous variation, we wanted to play queen to d7 in this position. But this time, knight to d4 is much stronger. And the reason is, now we are already hitting unprotected c2 pawn, threatening to fork them. You see, in the previous variation, their bishop was on b3, right? So this time we are already like having a winning edge. And most guys are going to play bishop to b3 to protect the pawn, which is not correct. And now we are just totally winning. And the reason is basically they spent 2 moves putting the bishop on b3 instead of playing it in 1 move. And we just got to play knight to d4 for free. And this time, like all the other traps that we have are working the same, but better. So here we play pawn to h6 to hit the knight. Most guys are going to go knight to f7. Now our queen is under attack, so queen goes to d7. And in this position, like, they have to capture the rook, which is what 99% of the time people are going to do. Otherwise, we are threatening to capture this bishop, and then this knight is unprotected. So they would capture the rook. But now we have this really cool move, knight to f3 check. And we are forking the king and the queen, and actually they have to lose the queen, because if they capture the knight, again, this is just walking into a straight forced mate. Alright, let's go back and let me briefly talk about the correct move, the third most played one, bishop to c4. So this is the most correct variation for them, for a reason that if we continue with the same moves like usual, bishop to g4 to hit the queen, like here, this is the position where they can play bishop to e2 to block this attack. But notice how most guys are anyways playing queen to e1. And this is just going to transpose to the same thing as I have just showed you. Because knight to d4 hits the c2 pawn, and most guys are going to play bishop to b3. Yes, but if they play bishop to e2, now you can capture this bishop, they recapture, you can make their queen undeveloped, then harass this knight back, and here, for example, you can just win your pawn back, and this is a position where the material is equal, but white is slightly better because I guess their king is safer. Alright, anyways, now let's go back again, and this time let's have a look at what would happen if they don't get castled after pawn to d6, but they play the greedy variation with knight to f7, forking the queen and the rook. Well, the stockfish says this is still very much better for white, with the advantage plus 0.9, but look at this, 76% of the time white is losing after the move queen to f8. So with this move we are putting our queen on the most aggressive square on the semi-open f-file, and we are setting up a whole bunch of nasty tricks. So for example, the most played move is just capturing the rook in the corner, played more than 80% of the time. Lose this for white immediately after bishop captures on f2. Now, if king don't accept the bishop and they go to e2, they are going to be losing the queen like this. And if they go to f1, they are going to be losing the queen like this. It is still trapped. And if they capture the bishop, this is forced checkmate in 4. After captures with a double check, king to e3, queen to f2 check, they can grab this knight, but bishop to f5 check, and after king somewhere, queen somewhere is checkmate. Also this square. Also, what is pretty nice about this trap is it works no matter where they put the bishop in the opening. So that was after our bone cloud. If they play bishop to c4, the most correct square, we go d6, and in the event of knight to f7, we can again go queen to f8, and look at this, more than 90% of the times people are grabbing this rook and get hit with bishop captures on f2. And it looks like if they just go to f1, we cannot trap their queen because they have this bishop to e2. Well, this is not the case, because now we can hit them with knight to d4 again. And if they capture, we capture, they are going to capture, And the winning move here is bishop to h4, discard check. And now they can either get checkmated by moving the king, or the stockfish is recommending to play queen to f3 or queen to f5 and just lose the queen anyways. Alright, let's go back. Let's just stick with the most played move, bishop to b3. So d6, knight to f7 and queen to f8. How about they don't capture the rook? Well, the only correct move here is rook to f3, which doesn't get played. It gets played like... where is it? It gets played 0% of the time. So if they play this, it gives us time to save our rook, and like the position is nearly equal now, the stockfish says all of a sudden. But the second most played move, let's have a look at this. It is getting castled here. Well, this is now slightly better for black, and basically we are going to go for the same game plan as we've been analyzing the whole time. We go bishop to g4 to hit the queen. Now they don't even have the option to play knight to f3, as their knight is stuck on f7 now, so they have to go queen to e1, and now knight to d4 again. And this way we are threatening to capture this bishop, and this knight would be hanging, so they are again forced to grab the rook in the corner. And now the idea is to go queen to c8. You see, it's similar idea. It was with queen on the home square going to d7. The idea is to get it on this light square diagonal, and we are anticipating the move pawn to h3, which is the only correct move here for white. But again, it only gets played 3% of the time. And if they play this, you can capture this with the bishop. This is the point of setting up this battery, and they cannot recapture. If they capture back, this is just again totally crushing for black. But what's even cooler, after queen to c8, most guys are going to play like knight to f7 or knight to c3 or anything else, and against these moves we are having knight to f3 check, forking the king and the queen again, and they have to lose the queen, because after pawn captures the knight and bishop captures, this is forced checkmate. Alright guys, I guess this is all that I wanted to cover in this video. It is getting pretty long, so I'll stop it right here. Thanks everyone for watching, have a great day, have a great life, and yeah, see you around, bye.